Hi Pop Tarts, I hope you're doing well. I just want to start by saying a massive thank you to everybody who commented underneath the video that I made about witchy materialism and consumerism. I read some really interesting things in the comments, and the comments really came to life, and it was so interesting to see snippets of other people's stories and the kind of trials that they've been through in relation to consumerism and stuff. I really appreciate a lot of the vulnerability and the openness that I saw, and the willingness that people had to share their own experiences and their own stories and their own problems, because even though I think it's difficult to put yourself out there like that and be open about what's going wrong for you and about maybe bad habits that you have formed, I do think that you're doing a service to the wider community, because it makes other people feel less alone, and it helps those who maybe aren't as confident to leave a comment and say, yeah, you know, I have a problem like this, to see that they're not alone, that they're not going through it in isolation, you know. So thank you very much for your vulnerability. It does mean a lot to me, and it was really interesting to read what you guys had to say about this. And equally for people that, you know, have the opposite thing and don't succumb to materialism, it was really interesting to see how you've managed to get to that place and how you've managed to avoid those consumerist pitfalls that some witches do end up succumbing to. So yeah, thanks for that too. Thank you for the whole spectrum of opinion. It was very interesting for me indeed. I want to touch on three particular comments, and I'm not going to read the names of the people that actually wrote these comments because I don't know whether or not they want the spotlight thrust on them, but there were three comments that were left among the massive array of comments that I received under that video, and I kind of want to take them into consideration particularly and make somewhat of a part two that kind of carries on from the subject that I was clicking into before, but actually kind of addresses these comments specifically. The first one says, you know what I've noticed? When I come across an item, deck, stone, and the second thing after falling in love with it is contemplating what it's going to look like in Instagram pictures, I know it's a superficial desire and not something I truly need. So basically what this person is saying is that they experience this feeling of, you know, seeing something that they like, identifying that they want it, but then the second after they think, I want it, they think, how would it look on Instagram? You know, what would people think of it? So there's that kind of feeling of being watched, of being the object of somebody else's voyeurism and making decisions based upon that, and realising that that's not healthy. And I think that was a really interesting thing that I read. The second comment says, I went overboard and got tons of tarot decks and books for a time, and to be honest with you, it got old anyway, especially after seeing that I didn't bond with every single deck that I got. I wish I could say that I didn't want to buy any decks for the longest time, as you've described. Some of what I got I gifted to friends who would give them a good home. Some went to the used bookstore. Most of the rest are sitting idly in a nice box. I like them fine, but I don't like that I let myself collect like that. For those of us who have overindulged in any goodies, how and to what degree do you suggest that we pare back down and heal from the sickness? I think that's a great question. I'm going to answer that question here in this video. The third comment says, I can't tell you how much I needed to hear this right now. I've been spending money. I'm ashamed to admit I even borrowed some money from my child, but it has been paid back, all with the purpose of feeling like I need this or that for my craft. This person goes on to say that she really beat herself up for purchasing things with money that was meant for another purpose, and you know, she kind of, as soon as she'd done it, kind of realised, sort of came out of her body and had that out of body experience where she realised she'd done it and was really angry with herself and asking herself, why do you keep doing this? Which I definitely think is an experience that people do have, whether it's connected to buying witchy stuff or whether it's connected to buying shoes or makeup or anything else. Shopping can be addictive. When you're shopping for things that you really want and you get on that high, you know, you're high with the desire to buy kind of thing, you do release dopamine and endorphins. They do kind of surge into your body and they give you that nice warm fuzzy feeling, and that's why shopping can become addictive. A lot of the time people seek this warm fuzzy feeling that comes from shopping for goods and amassing material objects, because that warm fuzzy feeling is missing from other areas of life. You know, you feel that you're getting a deficit of endorphins and dopamine being released in your life, so you connect shopping with that rush and with that lovely warm fuzzy feeling, but of course it doesn't last very long, and afterwards you're left to rationalise why you've done this thing again that you kept saying that you didn't want to do. So first of all, I think you need to realise that there is something biochemical about it which stems from an emotional need. So you're actually running after that release of endorphins and dopamine so that you can kind of paper over something that is missing in your life. That's kind of what happens when it becomes addictive, if you like. So I think For people that do find themselves consistently moving towards buying material objects, and then pretty much immediately afterwards the spell is broken and you find yourself thinking, why the fuck did I do that again? Then it's likely that you are experiencing that release of endorphins and dopamine, and you are slightly addicted to that feeling. You know, that feeling is very Moorish. And I think really what it takes to do is to be clear with yourself about the fact that shadow work might need to be welcomed into the equation. You might need to ask yourself, whereabouts in your life is that natural, organic high, that warm, fuzzy feeling that comes from just the pleasure of being alive and expanding and learning and connecting with people? Where is that missing? Is it missing in your home life? Is it missing in your career? Is it missing in the spiritual sense? Where is it missing? Because the likelihood is that you're trying to paper over those cracks, and there's really no need to do that. All you need to do is to confront where that warm fuzzy feeling isn't as it should be or isn't as it might be, and work from there, start from there. That is the strong foundation from which to build. When you amass witchy tools and you know that you already have a plethora of witchy tools that you haven't even really used or gotten to grips with or bonded with yet, there are deeper reasons for that. It's not just, you know, I think a few people really got a kick out of the fact that I said that buying stuff doesn't turn you into Gandalf. And it's true, but I think that surface belief that buying the stuff is going to make you a better or more potent witch, that's just the surface belief. There's a whole mess of crap underneath. There are deeper reasons why you keep doing it. And it could be because you feel that you are unworthy of a spiritual practice which is based in actual experiences and real learning. Maybe you feel like you can't get that for yourself, you know, so material objects fill that void. Maybe you feel emotionally deprived in some other way and you've just latched onto the fact that buying shinies for your altar makes you feel in that temporary moment as though you're giving yourself something, you're giving yourself care, you're giving yourself love. But actually it's a false economy, because that isn't the kind of self-love and self-care that you want to give to yourself, you know. So it's like you've created a neural pathway which connects self-love with buying yourself things, and all it takes is for you to undo that neural pathway. And remember, once you've carved it, it's quite ingrained. So when you try and undo it, it's a little bit like picking stitching. You've got to be patient, you've got to be careful, and you've got to be consistent. You've got to keep doing it. You don't break a habit overnight, but the first thing to do is to realise that that habit is there, you know, and then you can work from that point. I think one good thing to do is to write a declaration of your commitment to breaking the habit, and that starts with writing an honest statement that shows you truthfully that you know that you find shopping for witchy stuff Moorish, you know, a little addictive, and you know that it's not doing anything good for you. If you start by writing that statement and then write the declaration of commitment to start unpicking those threads, I think that's a really good place to start with personal accountability. I would recommend that you don't downplay how difficult it is for you to refrain from buying things. You might be telling yourself, this is so stupid, like, why am I doing this, this is idiotic. And when you have a small victory by like not buying that incense that you don't need, or not buying that stone that you don't need, you might actually neglect to praise yourself for the strength and the self-awareness that it took to actually refrain from purchasing that. And this is something that I tell my clients all the time. Praise yourself. Praise yourself. When you pick a stitch, even if it's just once, even if you refuse one time to do that thing that you know is hurting you, praise yourself for that, congratulate yourself for that, honour yourself for that, witness the effort that it took to do that. And that will make it into so much more of a potent experience. If you walk away from something that you really feel the itch to purchase, but you know that you don't need it, you don't want it, and it's just going to be another thing that you regret buying, then that is a moment at which you can congratulate yourself, because you've done something amazing. You have defied the neural pathway that you've set up, which you know is unhelpful and unhealthy. So go with that, praise yourself for that, pat yourself on the back for that. And another thing, if you refrain from spending money on something that you don't need, that you were really, really close to purchasing, take that money you were going to spend and put it away. Put it in your savings account, put it in a piggy bank, you know. If it was expendable cash before in your mind, then it's still expendable now. You can do something much more nutritious and delicious with it. You can put it away. And then the next time you are convinced that you need to buy a deck or buy a stone and you're about to part with money, if you can pull yourself back, put that money away as well. And watch it grow. And that is so satisfying. I'm going to tell you that from personal experience. That's very satisfying. You can keep a written record of your behaviours, of the times that you felt tempted to purchase and didn't, and also the times that you felt tempted to purchase and did. So this is about really having a look at the pattern, the narrative that you seem to be going through with regard to consumerism, so you can actually learn from it, you know, and actually accompany yourself through this journey of trying to turn the tide and make different choices, because it is a really important journey. It is a really significant thing, and it's beautiful, and it shouldn't be overlooked. In one of those comments that I read out at the beginning of the video, somebody asked, how do you recommend starting to bond with the stuff that you've already got? And I would say there is probably a reason why you purchase the things that you purchase. If you can look at objects as teachers, if you can look at them as things that have wisdom to give you, if you just cock your ear and listen in a way that doesn't involve, you know, the comprehension of human language, like the way you might learn from plants or the cycles of nature, or, you know, the way that a deity might communicate with you, not through language so much but through symbols. If you think of an object like that, then you can look at an object as a potential teacher, and you need to just wipe the dust off of it and sit it in front of you and give it your time and just ask it, you know, why did I purchase you? Why did I come home with you? What are you for? And then just start to play with it. If it's a crystal, start to play with it, start to scry with it, just hold it, move it from hand to hand. If it's a deck, get it out, start to go through it, maybe write about your emotional responses to it. Even if your emotional responses are negative, maybe you purchase something and you don't want to touch it or have much to do with it, and you don't really know why you bought it. Those objects are the best because they're probably triggers for where you were in your life when you purchased that thing. If you purchased a deck and now you're thinking, I don't even know why the fuck I purchased this, get the deck out and look through it and think about what it might tell you about the place you were in your life when you purchased it, what was going on that day or that month or that year that made you purchase that deck, and what kind of nuggets of hidden wisdom does that deck that is seemingly unwanted have to give to you that you never could have imagined would be so helpful. In the last video I talked about witchcraft being about discipline, focus, you know, really using your mind to home in on one thing to the detriment of everything else. That's how you heighten your creative visualizations, you know, that's how you put your energy into things. You sustain your focus. If you've bought a lot of things and you feel like you're flitting around and you can't focus on anything that you've purchased and you just feel like everything's sitting there and you don't know what you're doing with it, then I would challenge you to improve your own standing as a witch, improve your power as a witch by choosing to focus your intention and energy on just one thing for the space of a month. You know, if there's a deck that you have purchased and then abandoned, or a load of books about a subject that you purchased and then never read, now is your time to commit to daily observation of just those one or two objects to the detriment of everything else. Why not? Why not? You purchased them. You, at some point, made an unconscious commitment to work with them. If you can give your focus to just one deck, or just one crystal, or just one book, or just one anything for 30 days and just sustain that, then I think that really, really heightens your abilities as a witch. And I'm going to talk in another video about daily observances and lesser and greater observances and creating your own timetable for, you know, a specific magical or spiritual discipline, because I really feel that's heightened my abilities as a witch, and it's heightened and improved the way that I feel about myself as a magical being. So definitely do that with objects that you have seemingly abandoned or left by the wayside. You know, commit. Actually commit to the daily grind of only working with that thing. Just see it as a time experiment. In fact, that might make it feel less overwhelming if you just see it as an experiment that you're doing. An experiment in which you pare back everything else, you just cut everything back, cut back the thicket of complexity that your practice has become, and just literally place your focus, the spotlight of your focus, on this one thing. And that can be an experiment that you do with time to see how it affects your practice and your sense of yourself as a witch if you just focus on this one tool and use this one tool and really commit to it. Now I'm going to coin a phrase, and I'm hoping that this phrase is going to become something that other people can relate to and use themselves when they're trying to explain how they feel about this kind of thing. And the phrase that I'm going to coin is witchy gaze. So in those comments that I read at the beginning, somebody said that the first thing that they think about after they realise that they want a deck is how it's going to look on Instagram, what the Instagram pictures of this deck are going to look like. To me, that's a perfect example of what I would call witchy gaze. And I started realising that such a thing existed when I upgraded my altar. I got a new altar table for my birthday this year, and I had wanted an upgrade for a while, and I did say that when we moved to another place I was definitely going to have a massive upgrade because I wanted separate parts of my altar for different things, and I wanted a part of my altar that was specifically dedicated to my matron, but I didn't want a separate shrine for her, you know, I wanted it to be on the working altar so it would be imbibed with my energy. So I upgraded my altar, and I remember that I wanted to have a certain amount of time just alone with it, playing with it and thinking about what I wanted it to be, because I quickly realised that I was wondering how I could set it up and how I wanted it to look in terms of what I wanted it to look like in images or on video, or in terms of the way other witches would perceive it. And I very quickly realised that's fucked up. And actually what it is for me is it's a natural consequence of being on YouTube since 2011. It's a natural consequence of hanging out with witches online, looking at their altar setups, you know, watching altar tour videos and stuff, and having a witchy business and being in somewhat of a witchy spotlight myself, in the sense that I have a YouTube platform and a platform online. So I didn't beat myself up about it, but I did think, wow, you're really thinking about the altar from this out-of-body perspective, you know? And I realised then that I was dealing with witchy gaze, as it were, like the idea of other witches looking at it and their judgments of it and their perceptions of it and what it would say about me. And that is no way to set up an altar space, and I quickly got myself in check. So it definitely does happen, and I would ask you to consider, if you have any kind of online platform, if you post pictures on Instagram, if you hang out with a witchy community online, if you have a YouTube channel, ask yourself before you purchase something, am I experiencing witchy gaze with this? And am I using that as the barometer of how much I actually want it? So just think for a while about how much of an influence witchy gaze has on your path in terms of online presence, or maybe the coven that you're a part of, or witchy people in your you know, fleshly, earthly community, or in the cyber community. To what extent do you feel like witchy gaze is dictating your buying choices? You just need to steer clear of that and get back to a place of selfhood. And for me, I just knew that I needed to have some time alone with my altar, tuning into what felt right for me as an individual and what it was that I always wanted when I had the smaller altar and I didn't have the room for everything. So I did some journaling and some brainstorming, and I really just tried to remove myself from that sense of witchy gaze because it wasn't doing me any favours. If you relate to anything that I've said in this video today, or in the video that I made before, which I'll link for you in the down bar if you haven't seen it yet, then the first thing I would encourage you to do is not to mock yourself or berate yourself or be mean to yourself about it. That's not going to help. It's really just going to drive you further towards consumerism, you know? Like it's really not, if you're against yourself, if you're pitted against yourself, then there's no way that you can work with yourself to unlearn and unpick these behaviours. You're basically just going to be driving yourself further into the warm, fuzzy, temporary, junk food, McDonald's style feeling that you get when you purchase witchy stuff. So always be on your own side. Love yourself through this. Don't be mean to yourself about it. If you're one of the people who watched the last video and watched this video and feel like you do not relate to the things that I've said at all, and that consumerism or overt consumerism is not a problem in your practice, then I would urge you to please refrain from judging those witches who are struggling with these kinds of issues, because the struggle is fucking real. It's not a game, and it doesn't make somebody less of a person. It really doesn't, especially if they're willing to actually observe and admit to their behaviour and do something about it. So, you know, please refrain from getting on a superiority hype about it. Like, it's very, very cool for those people who don't experience that urge towards overt materialism, and I definitely congratulate that, and I think we can learn from people like that. But it's really important that for those witches who are struggling with this, that they feel supported by the community in that, you know. For me, I think when you realise that you're going through something like this, it's important not to be mean to yourself about it, but also not to bypass it either. So it's tough love, and I often say that a lot of self-love is tough love, you know. That's the bulk of self-love, really, is tough love. It's accountability. It's about saying, honey, I love you, but you got to fucking stop. It's about being constructive and proactive in the unpicking and unlearning of these unhelpful neural pathways that you've created. I really hope that this has been a helpful addition to some of the topics that I touched on in the first video, and until next time, so much love. Blessed be.